Namaste. Welcome to anyone who's new to this channel. This channel is dedicated to helping people understand the difference between actual non-duality in the Indian tradition called Advaita Vedanta and Neo-Advaita, or watered down, pseudo, false, fake non-duality. You can learn more about it in the links I have posted to the side and below. So, I got a very interesting, I do some online writing on this topic, and someone gave an interesting response. So the topic was, what are some reasons why people are enlightened in different ways? And I presented a little bit about the traditional Vedic, Dharmic Indian view of spirituality and contrasted it with religion. So very briefly, religion in the Western concept, you think of Judaism, more Christianity and Islam, is this idea that it's a one-size-fits-all thing. That this is the truth and you must follow it, you must do this practice, you must call God by this name, you must read that book, etc., etc., etc. That's kind of the Western idea of religion. Now in India, they have a very different approach. And the fundamental idea is that there are various methods and means and pathways that all lead to one truth. That doesn't mean that every path is 100% true or every teaching or religion is 100% true, but that we're all on this vast journey that leads to one truth. And then again, within the Dharmic view, there's all these different methods and means for approaching the truth. And here's the big difference. The various methods and means are all that different people are suited to different methods and means. Now, this is in strict contrast with the Western idea of religion, which really is this like, hey, let's squeeze everybody into this formula. Here's where it gets interesting. Neo-Advaita, watered down, delusional non-duality, has really taken this Western idea and said, you've got to practice non-duality. You've got to practice self-inquiry. It's the only way. It's the highest truth. Some teachers will go so far as to say, everything else, leave it aside. They'll even criticize, like, don't practice other forms of meditation. Don't practice bhakti, devotion. Just this. This is the supreme truth. Some teachers will go so far as to spout the ridiculous idea, well, there's nothing to do since you're already enlightened, so stop everything else. It's very dogmatic, very rigid, and doesn't meet people where they are and help them to take the next step forward. Just like a Western religion, Neo-Advaita tries to squeeze people into a belief system and into a formula. Here's where the rubber meets the road. The person responded to what I wrote and they said, however, the similarities we share as humans are what make the general teachings applicable for everyone. And anyone who, I could go on, but again, the similarities we share as humans are what makes the general teachings applicable for everyone. Well, actually, that's just not true from a Vedic, Dharmic, traditional non-dual point of view. From a traditional, and I'm just talking about the traditions in India, but I'm other sort of mystical traditions, I'm sure would have a similar orientation of you find a guru who's able to tune in to where you are and is able to guide you as an individual. The problem with general teachings is it's like a mass message. And in fact, Ramana Maharshi said there can be no mass teaching. He straight up said that in essence, it doesn't really help, at least in terms of the path of enlightenment. You can go and listen to a sermon that's one person talking to a group of people, but that's not what actual genuine spirituality is. It's meeting each individual where they are and helping them take the next step forward. Now, this becomes very, very pertinent and serious when we're talking about Neo-Advaita, neo-non-duality, because the general teaching in Neo-Advaita is you don't exist and or just practice self-inquiry. That general teaching is very dangerous and very harmful. That's what this channel is all about, helping people recover from that very harmful teaching. Now, at a certain time on the path, yes, self-inquiry can be helpful. Ramana Maharshi said that. And I'll read a quote of Ramana's. If the aspirant have not one pointed mind, which is possible for him who has a pure mind full of sattva, self-inquiry is impossible. So, translation, if you don't have the prerequisites, self-inquiry is impossible. And this is what Neo-Advaita loves to do. They throw out the prerequisites. But in throwing out the prerequisites, they throw out living. Because in traditional Sanatana Dharma, which is another name for the traditions of India, it's all about living. It's about understanding not just your universal self, but understanding, you could say your personality, there's different words, and how you fit into the social fabric. Like, what's your part to play in the social fabric? And the social fabric starts with your family and then extends to your community and then extends to your work and then extends to the fact that we're all, there's a beautiful phrase for it in Vedic philosophy. In essence, that we're all members of one family. And so it's understanding your part and playing your part, doing your duty, doing your dharma, being a harmonious part of a whole. Neo-Advaita throws this out completely. And this is where it gets very specific. Each of us has a different part and a different role. And that role can and does evolve and change over time. And that's where a formula just doesn't work. And also in Neo-Advaita, part of the Neo-Advaita formula is just to ignore all of that and just go right to self-inquiry or right to philosophy, giving no guidance on how to live. The lie is taught that if you just inquire or you just realize that you don't exist, all of your problems will be solved. It's a lie. That's why I'm doing that. That's kind of the essence in Neo-Advaita, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's almost like Neo-Advaita is an experiment. I tried it. Other people have tried it. It doesn't work. It didn't work. But part of the experiment was a lie that, hey, this is the truth. This is going to solve all of your problems. And it just doesn't. And then it can be a bit of a complex process of extricating ourselves from all the lies. Because Neo-Advaita is illusion and delusion and lie and misinterpretation. It's just layer after layer after layer. I liken it to a spider's web. It's not so easy to get out of once you've gone far down into it. Nobody. Hi, nobody. I'm live. I'm alive. Neo-Advaita tried to kill me. Didn't succeed. Warm welcome to you. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to type them in. So that's my sermon of the day, is don't listen to sermons. My sermon is the anti-sermon. Really, I mean, honestly, that's a big part of what this channel is about. Is Neo-Advaita has become a religion. A religion is a formula, and it kind of cultish as well, in that it does trap your mind. And so my sermon is the anti-sermon. Don't listen to people teaching to groups of people. That's not to say that everyone who gives a talk to a group of people is a false teacher, but that's just not what spirituality is. That's like an introduction. But it's become a religion. That's why people go to satsang every week, just like people go to church each week. Like, that's what you do. You go to church on Sunday. Oh, that's what you do. You go to satsang once a week. Like, okay, well, that's religion. That's not non-duality, not traditional non-duality anyway. So part of what I do here is I just share my own process of extricating myself from the illusion and delusion of Neo-Advaita and point people towards traditional teachers. All right, nobody, I'll catch you another time. So nobody put I used to like Muji, but through you, I noticed how culty it is. I wish you could talk more, but I gotta go now. All right, well, catch you another time. I'm glad I helped you see that particular teacher is offering a formula, a religion, and I would agree, somewhat culty. The thing to be mindful of is most teachers out there are not teachers. I had a real quantum leap a couple days ago. I realized, oh, all those people I listened to, they actually weren't teachers. I can just put aside everything that I learned there. Like, oh, they weren't teachers. That wasn't non-duality. Boom. It feels so clean and clear when I do that, because the way Neo-Advaita or cults work or false teachings work is someone offers a teaching and then the individual takes it in. And so the process is to get it out. And it just feels so profound for me to just say, you know what? Those actually weren't teachers. Oh, that wasn't actually non-duality. That's all I have today, unless there's any further comments or questions. Nice to meet you, nobody. And so, nobody, I don't want to criticize you. You put I in quotation marks, and I did that for a while. And I just want to point out that, Ramana Maharshi was very comfortable using the word I. He would just say, when I was a child, I da-da-da. When he described his awakening, he's like, I experienced this deep fear of death. I laid down, and what I realized was, so Neo-Advaita has completely stolen the word non-duality and redefined it. They've also stolen the word I and redefined it. They've redefined non-duality in a non-true way, and they've redefined the word I in a nonsensical, untrue way. So, and part of how Neo-Advaita operates is it teaches a new language. Yes, I don't even want to say teacher. If the person teaching, I don't even want to say teaching. If the person preaching Neo-Advaita speaks French, then yes, they speak in French. And if they speak English, yes, they speak in English. But they teach a new language. It's like they teach a new grammar. And part of that grammar, and I would say false grammar, is that people then become afraid to say I. And it creates this confusion, right? Traditional Advaita Vedanta is based around answering the question, who am I? But Neo-Advaita has added in all this nonsense that it takes us further away from the question. It adds in a mental answer to the question, who am I? It adds all these mental concepts and layers to such an extent that it's hard to even have a conversation. Traditional Advaita Vedanta has very precise language to describe the personality, to describe the universal self, and to talk about the integration of personality. Because ultimately, non-duality means not two. See, Neo-Advaita is very dualistic. It says, I don't exist. The world doesn't exist. Only consciousness is real. Well, that's very dualistic. It takes the world and it splits it into two pieces and says this piece doesn't exist. Well, dualistic religions say, here's God, here's the world. They're separate. And it's like, here's God, here's the world, you're a part of the world. You two are separate. Neo-Advaita says, here's consciousness, here's the world. They're separate. The world doesn't exist. It's just like a dualistic religion. It's kind of funny. Neo-non-duality is very dualistic. It's a funny joke when you see it. All right, beautiful souls. Thank you so very much for dropping by. And again, this is not to criticize nobody. We're all trying to find our way. But I just want to point out that traditional Advaita doesn't talk that way. That's neo. I call it neo non-dual speak. That's how intense Neo-Advaita is. It literally reprograms us, and not in healthy ways. How we think about ourselves, the world, life, the meaning of life. That's part of why Neo-Advaita is so tricky to overcome, because the topic is the deepest essence of life and ourself. And Neo-Advaita offers false teachings about that, which are a little similar to the traditional teachings. But in the end, Neo-Advaita is just Maya. Maya is, in Vedic philosophy, is illusion, delusion, untruth. Maya is considered a power that conceals and distorts. Neo-Advaita conceals. So, most of us who were drawn to non-duality, we were seeking to have things, we were seeking to remove the obscurations so we could be free, so we could be peaceful, so we could be happy. But Neo-Advaita adds in more obscurations, all the while telling us it's helping us remove them. It conceals the truth even further, all the while lying. Like, this is the truth. This is leading you towards the truth. And then that second power of Maya, it distorts. I mean, that's, again, the essence of Maya is concealment and distortion. There's all these, it's a deep topic. What is Maya in Indian philosophy? I mean, encyclopedias could be written on, maybe not encyclopedias, but a lot of thick books could be written on that topic. But if you break it down to its essence, it's the power that conceals and distorts. And Neo-Advaita is like the best example of Maya I've ever heard. So imagine this. Imagine this. You're caught in a dream. You're in a nightmare, and you can't wake up. You're stuck in this nightmare. And within this nightmare, this figure appears who seems and sounds to be awake and holy. And they say, I can help you wake up. You're like, oh, thank God. Or maybe at first you don't even realize. They're like, hey, you're dreaming. And you're like, no, I'm not dreaming. This is real. And they're like, hey, you're dreaming. And finally they convince you, like, okay, oh shit, I'm dreaming and I can't wake up. Help. And this person's like, I can help you wake up. And you're like, oh my God, thank you. Yes. Like, this is the first person you've met in the dream who seems to know what the blankety blank is going on. So you're like, okay, help me. And they start to teach you. And you start to have moments where you feel more awake and you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. But over time, you don't actually wake up. And over time, you actually become more immersed in the dream. Because guess what? This figure within the dream was was part of the dream. And their purpose is to keep you trapped in the dream. So what's the trickiest illusion? One that offers you freedom, but takes you deeper into illusion and delusion. Now, that's just a metaphor. I'm not saying this world is a dream. I'm not teaching anything like that. But isn't that the supreme, wouldn't that be the supreme illusion? A false path out of illusion that actually takes you deeper into it, yet seems like you're waking up. Thank you so much for dropping by. I wish you a Neo-Advaita free day. And very honored to have had some of your attention. Thank you.